Today we're going to be talking about how to make a fresh wreath. It's one of my favorite things to do during the holiday season is to get out there, walk around my yard, look at all the different things that I can use around the yard to cut and use in the home for the holiday season. There's lots and lots of choices out there. I mean, magnolia, boxwood, holly, nandina, akuba. Of course, there's a lot of conifers don't grow in this area, but there are some. Leyland cypress is one of my favorites. There's juniper. There are gold mop cypress. There's the eastern red cedar. So there's a lot of conifers, and conifers typically are going to give you probably the most longevity, and it gives you that smell too, that kind of evergreen conifer smell that we're so used to and that we love at the holiday season. I'm going to give you kind of a step-by-step process on how to make a wreath. I do want to first start by saying I didn't make this one. It's absolutely gorgeous, but I always bring this up because, hey, if you don't want to make a wreath, then we've got a great selection here. Of course, we carry lots of cut greens. We carry lots of pre-made wreaths, boxwood. We've got this great one with just Fraser fir and some noble and some incense cedar and a little bit of juniper with the blueberries. It's got pine cones. So this is already done. You can ask us, we'll make a bow for you. You can slap a bow on it and you're done. You can add some stuff to it if you want to. You can add more berries. You can add lots of different things. I know I did that for my mom. She purchased a wreath like this, and then we just added some different elements to it to make it a really pretty wreath. So you can get basic ones. We have just Fraser fir or just noble fir, but we have a great selection of pre-made wreaths. I also bring it up because if you've ever purchased a wreath like this before, at the end of the season, a little tip is on the back, you'll see there is a wire frame, which is a wreath frame. So you can always, at the end of the season, just cut the wire off, take all your fresh greens, put them in the garbage, but then keep your wreath frame because you never know if you're going to need that again. So if you want to make a wreath in the future, you'll have a frame to work with. So lots of little tips and tricks there. We've got a great selection here. So if you're learning today, but you're kind of like, I'm a little strapped for time and I want to just get a wreath and put it up, come in. We've got a great selection of wreaths. If you're not in our neck of the woods, check out your local garden centers. Local garden centers are typically where you're going to find some of the best looking wreaths that are either handmade by them. We have a great group of people here that can make custom order wreaths, but also you might find some that are more professionally done. So definitely, support your independent local garden centers, your small businesses, and we've got a great selection here at McDonald Garden Center. If you've got any comments or questions throughout this webinar, definitely feel free to ask questions. If I don't get to them during the webinar, then I will answer them at the end. So I'll put this off to the side. Let's talk real quick. Let me just kind of clean this up. We got them we keep them nice and fresh by watering them a little bit every once in a while. So I just grabbed that this morning, so it's got a little bit of moisture in it. That's okay. Great. All right, so here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a pair of pruners for sure. One for going around and collecting all your greens. And that's probably the one thing that takes the most amount of time is walking around your yard, maybe asking some neighbors if you can get some clippings. You don't need a whole ton, so we don't need to go and butcher anything. We don't need to go and take a huge amount of cuttings, but definitely you're going to need a pair of pruners for this project. Then we're going to need our paddle wire. So this is kind of my must for the Christmas holiday decorating. You might have seen me mention this before. This is one thing that I definitely feel like everybody should have in their home. I will say here it's a little bit hard to come by. We usually sell it out kind of early, but you can usually get this at any kind of craft store. Most of you probably already have this. It can come on a spool, it can come on this paddle, it can be a lot of different things. And then there's a lot of different thicknesses as well. It is basically just a steel wire. This is coated with a green coating, so I don't know if you can quite see that there on the table. But because it's coated, it won't rust. And so that's really, really good, is not to use just regular steel wiring. Get something that's coated like this. And I love the paddle because I'll show you why this comes so handy when you're making your wreath. You also might want to cut off some pieces. We do sell these as well, just pre-cut pieces of wire. So you might need a couple of those. So if you've got only paddle wire, I do recommend maybe cutting off some pieces, having them off to the side just in case you need them. As we're actively making a wreath, you won't be able to get more wire if all you've got is paddle wire. So, so have a couple pieces of wire cut off to the side. I always recommend that because it does help. So we've got that. I'll put that off to the side. Maybe a pair of scissors just in case you need that. And then of course, your wreath frame. So that's really about all you'll need. And then everything else that you're going to put into your wreath or garland. I'm going to try and get to a garland if I can at the end. We'll see if we have enough time. It's basically the similar premise on how to, or process on how to build it. But we'll start with the wreath because that's what we're here to talk about. And I've got a lot of different examples too that I'll show you as we kind of go through this, because a lot of us make different wreaths and want different looking wreaths. And so that's great. But you will need a wreath frame. There's a lot of different styles of wreath frames out there. There's lots and lots of different styles, big, small. As you can see in this one, it's a pretty small wreath frame. So this is actually a 20-inch wreath because they're measuring from the outside diameter to the outside. So they're measuring straight across. But the wreath frame itself is probably 12 inches, maybe even a 10-inch wreath frame. So it really depends. I find that, I think this is a 20-inch wreath. I don't know what I did with the tag. But I think that's about 20 inches, maybe 18, 16 inches, somewhere in there. It's kind of personal preference. They're all pretty similar. This one is flat, so it lays flat on the table. You also might find some that have a couple different kind of tiers to it. Might have, 2 wires on the outside and then 2 wires on the inside. Really doesn't matter. All it is basically a guide and something to attach your fresh greens to. As I mentioned, probably the most time-consuming part of it is going out and collecting your greens, because that is what you're going to need to make your wreath. So go around, start thinking about what you want to use. You might even take a couple clippings and put them together and kind of see what you're working with to kind of get your kind of eye the right way and to kind of get the idea of what you want to create. For this first one, I'm going to start with just some Fraser fir, some cypress, and some gold mop cypress. So let me kind of pull those out because we want to have all of our pieces kind of nearby. So I've got a great bucket here full of Fraser fir. I'm going to take some of that and just put it off to the side. So we got lots and lots, and basically what I went around and did is just collected some tips. So we just got lots and lots of tips of Fraser fir. And then I've got a bucket here full of Leyland cypress tips. So these are just cypress tips. So let me explain to you real quick on kind of how I went about doing that. A branch of Fraser fir branch, you can get here, you can get cuttings here. Typically you're going to get a little bit of a bigger section than maybe this, but this is about the size that you want. For cypress, so if you've got a Leyland cypress, so this is a Leyland cypress here, a big branch. So what you're going to want typically is the tips, so you can just tip your plant. The plant actually will love that. If you just go around and collect the tips, then in the spring it'll regrow with a bunch of new growth. It's actually not a bad practice to just kind of go through. So I always kind of wait on that kind of shearing to shape my plant. I don't typically recommend doing it in the fall because sometimes you can get a little bit of growth and then it can freeze off if we get a early frost or freeze. But by now, the plants are dormant. They're not going to grow anymore. So you can go ahead and prune and cut a little bit. You don't want to prune too hard right now. But what I'm going to show you here is just kind of the tips that you can take here. I'm just going to take some of these tips off. Leyland cypress have lots and lots of them, lots in different sizes as well. So that's basically all I did. You can do it right off the plant, or you can go take bigger branches because you can always use this later in something like a porch pot or anything else that you might want to create. So we've got all these great fresh tips of Leyland cypress. Again, could be anything. Whatever you choose is great. And just make sure that it's going to last a while too. So there's some things that will last a long time, but there's some things that won't last quite as long. And if you've ever got questions about that, feel free to ask. But typically conifers are going to be the best. So then I've also got some gold mop cypress. So I've got all these little tips of gold mop cypress, and I love this because it's got that great gold color. You can see it right there. You'll even see it even more on that greenery. So it just adds a little bit of contrast in there. So that's what I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to show you kind of how to make a wreath. So the first step is going back to your wreath frame. So we've got our wreath frame here. Again, it doesn't matter what type it is. This one has a couple sections. I wish it maybe had a couple more of these bars. It would give us a little bit more support when we're making our wreath, but you'll find it's pretty easy to start with, and use any kind of wreath frame is perfectly fine. Even if it's just a single piece of metal, you can still make it work. The paddle wire is my go-to secret. You can do this with just pieces of wire. You can do it with just pieces of wire. It does take more time. It's a little bit harder to do, but if that's all you've got is just these strips of wire, you can do that. I'll kind of explain how you can do that as we go along. But the first step is, if you've got paddle wire, it's the best trick to making a wreath, because it's going to give you a lot of stability and a lot of strength too. And I'll show you why. So the first thing I'm going to do is just unroll a little bit of it, just a little strip there. Keep it on the paddle. We're going to keep it on the paddle the whole time. Now I like to start around one of these bars because that's going to give me the support to start my first bunch on. So what I like to do, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to go, I know it kind of probably looks opposite to you, but I am right-handed. So I'm going to start over here, and then I'm basically just going to weave it through. I'm going to go under one bar, over the next bar, and then just kind of come back around. There's no real rhyme or reason here to doing this. It doesn't necessarily really matter, but I'm just going to wind this on so that it's nice and tight. And all I'm doing is just get my wire attached. And then I'm going to take it and just pull it, make sure it's nice and tight. And this is why I love paddle wire, is because you'll be able to pull it a lot. All right, and then I'm just going to wrap it one more time, make sure it's nice and tight, it's not slipping. I can pull it really hard and nothing's happening. All right, so then I've got it set off to the right-hand side. It's still attached, but I'm ready to start. So what I like to do typically to start is make my bunches. And this is what I was mentioning when I was talking about walking around the yard and kind of getting an idea. You might just take some tips here and there. You typically are going to want all around the same size. So I went and cut these Fraser fir pieces all about somewhere between 8 and 10 inches. So I've got this little bunch here. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting together some pieces that I think look really good. Sometimes it can be one piece. Sometimes it can be multiple pieces. It doesn't really matter. So I've got a nice big section here. I've got a bunch of small ones. Let's see, that looks really good together. So we're going to start with that. So I've got my base. I usually like to use in the background a base, something that I have a lot of. So it could have been the cypress. I've got a lot of cypress, but I do have a lot of Fraser fir here at the store. So we sell Fraser fir cut trees, and we've got a lot of cuttings, and you can pick these up in bunches. If you buy a cut tree, when you take those bottom branches off to get it in your stand, you can get those branches, but we do sell Fraser fir if you want that. But you can use it, again, a lot of things. Cypress, conifer. We're going to talk about magnolia and boxwood as well here in a little bit. But I've got this great little bunch, and this is really what it's all about, is creating these nice little bunches. So then I'm just going to take some Leyland cypress, and I'm just going to lay it in there. And really what I'm kind of accomplishing with the Leyland cypress is just a little bit of filler. So just kind of a little bit of a fuller look, just kind of helps kind of allow you not to be able to see through the bunch of Fraser fir. Noble tips, you can buy Noble tips as well. Noble is gorgeous. That's what you're seeing here in our wreath, is that Noble fir. It's a really much fuller kind of needle, but you can get that with spruce. You can get it with a couple other conifer plants. But Fraser fir is a great one, easy. Leyland cypress on top of that. And then I'm just going to take some of this gold mop cypress. So, and this is where you kind of have to look at it and say, well, do I need that whole bunch or just this one? That's why I have my pruners handy. I just need probably a little piece. So I always save it because you might need it later. I'm going to show you a trick as well with that. So now I've got my gold mop cypress. So now you can see that bunch right there. So I've got Fraser fir on the underside, I've got Leyland cypress, and then I've got my gold mop cypress on top. And that's my bunch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay this right here, and I want all my bunches going in the same way. We're actually going to work backwards. But the first thing I do is lay it right over that I got that support bar, I've got my wire right there. I'm just going to put this on here, and then I'm just going to wrap it. And I like to wrap it 2 or 3 times. 1, 2, and you can pull it, and then 3. And that's why I love this paddle wire, is because now I know it's nice and secure. It's super, super tight. It's not going anywhere, and I'm ready to roll onto my next one. And that's what we're going to do. So the next thing you do is grab some more Fraser fir. And some people will go through and create bunches first, and that's fine. You can definitely, there's no specific way. This is just the way that I've always learned how to do it. It's my easiest way of doing it. Keeps you kind of hands-free, makes it kind of fun and easy. And you don't have to kind of think about it too much. And you don't have to do too much prep other than, like I said, going out and getting some of those fresh greens. So let's see here. That's a nice piece. All right, so then I've got my bunch here. I've got my bunch started. And you kind of, again, I think the trickiest part to making a wreath is I tend to probably start a little bit lighter and get thicker and thicker as I go. So I try to always force myself to create very equal bunches as much as possible. but don't get too kind of tied up in that. Don't get too worried. We can go back and touch it up and fix it if we need to. That is not a problem. So I'm just going to put my cypress in here. 2 pieces of Leyland cypress, nice and fresh and green. So just like that. And then I'm going to take that gold mop again and put it in there. Got my nice little bunch. And then I'm just going to lay it right over the top. So you can see there's my bunch with that first one attached. And then I'm going to lay this one right over top. Now it depends on how kind of full you want it. If you want it fuller, more bunches closer together. If you want it a little bit more open, you can separate them a little bit more. You can also, depending on the size of the wreath, sometimes you might go inside, outside. And so because I've got this gold mop and I really want to see it, I really want that to kind of stand out. And if I start covering it up, I'm not going to see it as much. I'm going to go inside and outside. So the first part I'm going to kind of put on the outside. So I'm kind of facing this way. So you can see I got it lined up perfectly. And then I kind of turn it this way a little bit. You can start on the inside too. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go kind of on the outside so that I can see all my nice greenery here. Once I get it kind of into place, then I just got my paddle wire. It's right there. 1. Pull it tight. 2. Pull it tight. And 3. And usually on that last one, I'll kind of pull it and let it sit downward so that I can have that kind of going in the direction that I'm going next. Let's do another one. So that's why I love having all my kind of greens cut, because I can just grab them and just kind of keep on rolling, and it gives me a kind of a chance to kind of breathe and think a little bit, and so I don't have to worry too much. And I love having my pruners nearby, because sometimes I get like that where one of these tips is a little bit longer, so I can prune that off, and now I've got my nice bunch here. And we can prune when we get done too. So if it starts to kind of get a little out of whack on you, that's okay. We're going to touch it up later. Got some cypress, some gold mop. So that piece is probably a little, well, it's not bad. It's not too bad. I'm going to take off a couple pieces, save it, because you never know if you're going to need it. It's a little long there. So I'm just going to take that off. And then I've got my nice bunch again. Now this one, I'm going to go slightly on the inside. And so as you can kind of see as that's forming is the first one kind of right in the middle, but it doesn't really matter if it's going one way or the other. But then you kind of go inside, outside, or I should say outside, inside, all the way around. And you just kind of keep that pattern going. So now we're just going to take this paddle wire, wrap it around, 1, 2, and 3. So there we go. And again, we can always go through and touch some of this up if we want to. But that's where we're going. And we'll just keep on going all the way around. Now, I've got one that I'm almost done with, so I'm going to kind of jump to that one because it does take some time to build this out, and I want to kind of be able to get to a bunch of different things here. So, but it's really, really simple. I mean, that's basically the idea. If you do need wire, if you're like, oh, I need wire, like I might need some paddle wire here. So I'm going to just cut it off with a little bit of length. And then I'm just going to take this and attach it off. I'm going to go back and finish this one later. It's turning out really, really nice. As you can see right there, looks really, really good. Nice and fresh, lots of greens, lots of different colors, a little bit of gold in it with that gold mop cypress. So we'll finish this one up later. But let's jump ahead to one that I was making last night. Now this one is the exact same idea, except for I did use a little sprig of holly in this one. So I'll kind of show you as I do that one how that turned out. I didn't do it on that one just because I didn't have a whole lot of holly. My holly was not the most amazing. It has, you know, I think this is kind of what an American holly. It's just a native holly that's growing in the woods in the back of my yard. But because they're in the woods, I don't get a lot of sunlight and they don't have a huge amount of berries, but they do have some. So I've got a little bit of that. I've got one sprig. As you continue to go around, so you can see my wreath here that I was making. As you continue to go around, this is what you'll end up with. So you can kind of see those little red berries in there. Can't really see them too much, so maybe I could have added those at the end. Maybe I could have cut off some artificial berries, something that might have shown up a little bit more. I can always add that back in later. But this is the point that I think typically people struggle with, is at the end. So I've gone inside, outside, all the way around, same concept that I was doing there before. However, I'm at the end, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I've got this one little spot. You can see it. It's a little thin down at the bottom. So you can see right there. Some people might just put a bow right there. If you do a big bow, it would look really pretty just to hang it with a bow right here. It would cover up that. But I'll show you how to finish it off because it's actually not that hard. So last night I left some wire on there. Let me unspool that. Now this is going to be a little bit trickier because I'm used to having my paddle with me the entire way, all the way through the wreath. But I left plenty of wire to work with. So we'll see if I can make this work. I could wrap it around a stick or something just to kind of have it, but we'll use my hand for now. So I've got my wire sticking off there to the side. I'm on my last bunch here. So it was the exact same setup. Fraser fir. Start with that. Ooh, that's a nice big bunch. So I got a nice one there started. Some people might actually use a slightly smaller grouping of greens for the last one. That's okay if that's what you want to do. I try and keep them all the same. I find it when you do a small one, you're typically trying to add a little bit more into that section. So I like my last bunch here to kind of be about the same size personally. But some people might make it smaller and then they can just kind of touch it up after that. So Leyland cypress. Get a nice piece here. There we go. 2 pieces of Leyland cypress. Back to my gold mop. Looks really, really good. Now, this one I used holly. So remember, I've got my little holly sprig cut. I did eliminate a couple leaves in there so I could show off those berries. And there you go. Now you can see that really nice, pretty bunch there. And that's going to be my last bunch that's going to go in here. So I just make sure I got everything lined up there. And then this is the tricky part. So this is kind of the hard part. I'm at the end. I've got just this one little piece here. Now this was my first bunch here. So this is my first one. This is my next to last bunch. But this is all I'm going to do is just kind of work this in behind it. So let's just kind of put it in there behind that. And this is the tricky part is you kind of, if you had somebody there to help, it would help because they can kind of hold it back for you. But it's not too hard to do by your own. So what I usually do is put it in there, get it to where I want it. And then I just hold it with my thumb on the inside. And then I use my wire. And then I just kind of weave it through. So I just kind of work it through until I get to the other side. Then I grab it. And then I'm just going to take it. And now I've got it attached and I can work it around very easily. And there we go. So that's a completed wreath right there. And it turned out really, really well. I'm really happy with that. So this is all kind of fresh. I just made this last night. It turned out really, really pretty. If you want to go through and touch it up, I'll show you how you can do that now. So like right here, I kind of, even where I did it, I did kind of end up a little short on some greenery. So it's a little bit thin. So before I cut off my wire, I'm going to take, and this is just me being a slight perfectionist here. There we go. Nice, good tip that I got right there. So I'm actually going to cut that because I don't need all of it. Save some of it for later. And then where I was a little thin right there, I'm just going to go and put this in. Just for a little bit more fuller finish off there. Because usually when you kind of cinch that wire around, sometimes you can kind of tighten it up a little bit too much and you kind of get a little bit of that area where it's like, ooh, I wish I had just a little bit more. And then I'm just going to wrap it and finish it off. And there we go. So there we go, done. And it's really easy. It's a lot of fun. It's super, super simple. It's all about creating that really pretty bunch. What I typically will tell people is for the first one, stay monochromatic. Just do one kind of green. And then we can always add stuff in later. As you get more and more experience, then you can start to add more things. But it's really, really simple. It's all about creating a pretty bunch. Put them in there. I would say probably, let's see if I can count them up. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I've got about 14 to 15 bunches in here. So that's a fair amount, but it turned out really, really nice and full. It's not too thick, so it's not gonna like, you know, if you've got a storm door or screen door or something from your main front door, then it's not gonna block it too much. I did kind of lose my red berry in there a little bit, but the holly leaf adds a little bit of a different texture, which I really like. So this wreath that I started, bunches alternating inside outside if you want to. I typically will say, so as we get into the next one, which I'll probably do the boxwood next, I typically would say don't worry about going alternating. Just kind of keep it simple and it's done. You can keep them all in the same kind of direction and path. It's pretty simple. But this is where we started. Keep on adding bunches. And then you get the final product. The hardest part is that last piece, which I'm going to show you with some of the other ones too, so you can kind of see it multiple times. But it really, really turned out well. Now, what I want to mention here with this is if there's something that you don't particularly like with the wreath, then you can fix it. Maybe you have a little bit of a thin spot here. I can take a little piece of greenery, just take a little sprig, and you can pop it in there. It's not going to be as tight as everything else, but you can definitely pop some things in there here and there if you need to add some stuff. You can pop some berries in there. I can do pine cones if I want to. Let me show you how to do that real quick. So let's say you take a pine cone. Let's start with this kind of one. So this is just a basic pine cone, and I want to put some pine cones in here. So what I will do is I'll go to my strip of green wire, just kind of work it around the pine cone, and I like to kind of go through the middle if I can on this. Now, if I was doing something different, I'll show you that here in a little bit, then you might go through the bottom, especially if you're using it more as a pick. But here I'll just take it and just switch them, and then there we go. I've got a pine cone that I can just wire right in. And so all I got to do here is just wrap it around and I can add pine cones. So I can put pine cones all the way around this too, which would look really pretty on this wreath. So easy to do. Add pine cones later. You can add some ribbon obviously for a bow. You can hang it just by a single piece of ribbon. I absolutely love doing that. I know you can't quite see it behind me, but that's basically what I've done here. This is an artificial wreath, but just I love that. I just love the simplicity of just hanging it from a piece of ribbon. It looks really, really good. So easy, easy, easy. Don't get too bottled up with how it turns out because you can always manipulate it and change it. I can put more in if I need to. So let's see, I can also prune it if I need to. So like right here, it's a little full and it's a little, poking out a little bit too much there. You can kind of see it on the camera there. Got a little weird spot. So I can always go through and just kind of trim off some of those tips and fix anything. So easy, it's all fresh greens. This is great. Now, you could spray this down with wilt proof or wilt stop. I will tell you it's very hard to find out there in the market right now. I can't seem to get any here into the store. It's very, very difficult. But the reason I'm teaching you this now is even if you didn't do anything to this, it would last a very long time. So I definitely through the Christmas season, I might go and water it tonight and just kind of soak it down real good, let it sit on a table or let it sit on a tarp, kind of soak up some of that moisture. Some things you can do is also when you cut all your greens, you can just soak them overnight, allow it to drink up a bunch of water, and then you can use them the next day. So lots of different options, but even if I just went and hung this on my door, it's gonna last all the way through the Christmas season. So that one turned out really, really well. All right, let me clean up my workspace real quick. Done with the Fraser fir, so we can get that out of here. I think I'm done with my Leyland cypress and my gold mop cypress. And then I want to show you boxwood. Boxwood is a awesome, awesome plant. It's very easy to grow. A lot of us have them in our yard already. And I'll tell you a quick trick on how to determine if you have boxwood or not. Because there's also a holly out there. It's called a soft touch or a non-prickly holly, basically a broadleaf evergreen holly, but it looks very similar to boxwood. So I've got my boxwood here somewhere. So I've got a bunch of boxwood. I'm going to take that out. Not that I'm going to need that much, but better safe than sorry. All right, and here's my boxwood wreath that I was making last night. So that's turned out really, really well. But you can see where I've got to finish. I'm going to show you just how to make a basic bunch. So here's where I need to finish. Let me just unspool my wire. Again, I wouldn't do this normally. I would typically have my paddle wire still on there and attached. But I only had one paddle. So last night, so I had to kind of think about how I was going to do this. But boxwood. Boxwood is awesome. I went and cut a big branch off so you can kind of see how it grows. Now, you get kind of different looks, different parts of the plant. So this was a bottom branch. So this is a great one because it's got a lot of flat branches, which I absolutely love. It's really, really easy to work with. But sometimes you also get these kind of top tips that kind of shoot out of the top, and they're a little bit more, they're not quite as flat. You can still use them though. They're great little pieces. You can use them in arrangements, but you can still use them for your wreath as well. So if you're going through and tipping, I kind of wanted to bring this in so I could show you how I tip my boxwood. So if I was just going to go through and not cut off big sections like this and just use some tips here and there, then typically what I'm going to want is, let's see if you can see it there. You see where it kind of forks and it kind of fans out? So it kind of almost has like a hand shape. You're going to get a longer piece typically in the middle, but those are the pieces that I really want. So if this was still on the shrub, I would just go cut these tips off. So I've got all these little tips now that I've cut off, and then I can go, I've got a straight piece here, but now I can leave that on the plant and it's going to grow and be nice and full next year from that point instead of going in and taking a big chunk out. You don't need big chunks. You just need little pieces. So if you're buying boxwood, or Leyland cypress and you get a big chunk, that's okay because you're going to cut off a bunch of tips. You typically want smaller pieces when you're making your wreath. So this would normally be back on the shrub. I'm going to save it because you never know if you might need it later. And then I can start making some bunches. Now let me show you this real quick trick on how to determine if it's boxwood. I don't know if you can quite see this. I think you can up against my red shirt. You see these two leaves here? They meet on the exact same point on this branch, which makes it a boxwood. If it were a holly, they would meet alternately. So one would hit here, one would hit here, and so on and so forth down the branch. So boxwoods, the leaves meet at the same point on the stem. On a holly, the leaves are going to hit here and here and here. So why is that important? Because holly is not going to last very long. So holly does not stay very long. Once you cut it, it doesn't typically last long. The soft leaf holly. Now a prickly holly, a berry holly, what you're kind of typically used to when I say holly, that is going to last a long time when you cut it. So that'll last a much longer time, but a soft leaf kind of boxwood looking holly is not going to last very long. And so boxwood is going to last much longer time and give you that really, really pretty color. I love it. Usually a soft leaf holly is going to be a little bit of a darker green as well, whereas a American boxwood or I don't think this was baby gem, it was winter gem boxwood is what, I have a big winter gem boxwood in my backyard, use it every year for cuttings, it's awesome. But you can use baby gem, you can use old English boxwoods, which grow super, super slow, so if you've got a bunch of old English boxwoods, you can use clippings from that, American boxwood, lots and lots of choices of boxwood out there that you can use. So let's finish up the boxwood wreath. Now, what I noticed as I was starting to clip my boxwood last night in the dark is I do actually have little tips of new green growth. So I don't know if you can quite see that, but it goes a little bit darker to a little bit lighter green. So I noticed that and I said, you know what, I kind of like that. I kind of like that color in there. So let me, every once in a while, I'm going to switch because the back of a boxwood is going to be much lighter green than the front, than the top. The top of the leaves are going to be a little bit darker green, but the bottom is going to be a light green. So to kind of help with those tips, so I didn't have to go through and prune off all these little tips, I went through and I said, every so often, I'm going to switch it in my bunch. So let's make a bunch here. So I want a nice full bunch. So I've got all these nice pieces here, and I'm at the last step of making my wreath. So you can see all my bunches went around, and then this is my last one that I got to put in there. So let me see if I can remember how big my bunches were from last night. And this way, I don't really have to think too much either about how perfect my bunch needs to be. So what I did was I took my green tops. I've got a little piece here that's brand new growth right on the end. So I've got that lime green color anyways, but then I laid this piece in upside down. And what that does is just add a little bit of that bright green color, which makes it look really, really pretty and fresh. So we'll do another little piece of that. Maybe one more just because it's my last section. I want to make sure I have enough. All right, so there we go. I've got my last bunch. I've got it all tight in my hand. Trickiest part is getting it in there. So you hold up your first bunch, you slide in your last one. Hold it with my thumb, and then weave my wire through. And this part might just be where you just kind of slow down. Don't worry about going too fast. And then pull it nice and tight. And then get it back through there again, because I want to wrap it around at least 2 or 3 times if I can. And then I'm going to leave a little bit, so I'm going to leave my paddle, because now I'm going to look at it and say, do I need a little bit more? Which I think I do. Looks like I need maybe just one more kind of nice full branch in there. So let's see if I can find a nice full tip in here somewhere. Maybe 2 if I can. So this was another big chunk that I cut off. All right, so let's see if I can get some nice pieces here now together. I don't need a whole ton. This is my last little piece. Just a little bit more to fill it in. Do I need I don't even think I need an upside down piece in here. So I'm just going to tuck that in it just a little bit further. Again, trickiest part, but that's okay. We're going to take our time. And then pull that, and then just finish off the wire in there. Let it just finish off. You can attach the wire to the back if you want to. But there we go. So there's my boxwood wreath. So it turned out really, really nice. Now, like I mentioned, if we feel like we need a little bit more, it's not going to be as stable as the whole wreath, but that's okay. If you did a really good job of keeping it nice and tight, we can always go in, add some more pieces here and there if we feel like we need to. If you shake it, you know, if you get a big windstorm or something to blow through, these might blow out because they're not wrapped into the wire. I'm just kind of baking it a little bit as we do. You just kind of go in and just kind of say, okay, I need a piece right there. Let me pop it in. And that kind of fills it in a little bit more. But that turned out really, really good. It's nice and fresh looking. Love boxwood. I personally love the smell of boxwood. It makes me think of gardening. Some people hate it. I can always go through and prune if I need to. If I've got something, I've got a little shoot here that's shooting towards the middle. You always want to make sure you keep your hole, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be absolutely 100% round. You just want this really pretty kind of natural look. And so there we go. I can attach a bow on this. I can hang it from a simple ribbon, but just this by itself is gorgeous. I could add something to it if I wanted to, maybe some pine cones, maybe a little bit of ribbon, maybe some lights. I'll show you that in a second. But boxwood wreaths are gorgeous and can actually be preserved. My mom has one. I know she's probably watching, but she has one. I don't know if she made it or if I made it, or she might have bought it actually from McDonald Garden Center. But it's a square wreath. It's boxwood. She hangs it in her den, which is kind of like cool, dryish spot of her home. It looks gorgeous, and it's preserved into a brown color. So it went to that kind of really pretty straw color. And she's had it hanging there for years, and so you can actually preserve these. You could spray it with a lacquer. I don't know enough about that to really explain it too much, but this is going to last for sure all the way through the holiday season. If it starts to kind of turn that straw color, I might put it in my garage, a nice cool dry place where it's not going to get a lot of moisture, it's not going to mold on you, and then it can preserve into a very nice brown kind of straw color. And what I mean by preserve is the leaves aren't going to fall off. If you start losing a lot of leaves, wasn't the right spot, try again next year. But this is going to look really, really great on my kitchen window or on my front door or wherever I want to hang this. Looks great. And I love them just by themselves. I think it's just perfect just by itself. So there's boxwood done. All right, so the next one, another common plant that we grow in this area is magnolia. So a lot of us have magnolia around the home. It is a different animal to work with. So that's why I wanted to show you that one. Because magnolia is a little bit trickier to work with. So let me just kind of wipe everything off here. So magnolia branches. A lot of us have magnolias in our yards or in a neighbor's yard or a friend or family. And trust me, if you've got a big southern magnolia, you've got plenty to go around. They can get huge. But also there's the teddy bears and the little gym magnolias. And there's a lot of different types out there. There are some that have the green backs. There's some that have the brown backs. Mine, in my yard, happens to have the brown back. I'm not quite sure. It was there when I bought the home. So I've got some nice brown back pieces, but I've also got the green tops. So all I'm going to do here is just pick off the leaves. And it's nice because I've got lots of big ones. I've got some small ones. I've got some medium size, which is exactly what I need to make a wreath. Now you can use just the tips, but it doesn't turn out quite the way I think everybody thinks a magnolia wreath should look. So I'll show you that as well. So I got some branches here. So if we just took these nice kind of tips off, just snap that tip off, snap that tip, snap that tip. Now I could take these and wire them together, but they tend to kind of fan out and they tend to kind of be a little sprawly, which is great if I've got a big wreath frame that I want to fill out. But if I've got a smaller wreath frame, like my typical size here that I'm using today, then I usually like to take the leaves off. And it's a little bit easier. You can do all the green side. You can do all brown. You can spray paint them with gold when they're done. So lots and lots of different choices. So I'm just going to use the leaves. So let's just keep taking off some leaves here. Make sure I've got enough pieces to use, different sizes. Some of these have some really good brown color. Some of them don't have any brown color. Some of them are just green. So let me see if I can show you the difference there. So here we go. Usually the older the leaf, then the less brown is on the back. So you can see it right there. Let me see if I can find a nice brown. There we go. So now you can really see that difference. So this one has just lost its brown color on the back. This one still has it. So this one I might want to use for the brown. I usually like to separate them that way. I'll separate my big leaves off. Again, it doesn't have to be super, super scientific or specific. We're just kind of having fun with it. I've got some medium-sized pieces. I've got a nice little curled one that I might use. So we've got lots and lots of different pieces here. So we'll just kind of get those separated off. And I do like to have all my leaves kind of pulled off and be ready to roll so that as you start to make these bunches, you'll see kind of how tricky this is. It's a little bit harder to do than a typical wreath, which is why I wanted to show you. So again, last night I stayed up and started making my magnolia wreath, and there's where I'm at. So look at that. Turned out really, really nice. The cool thing about the way that I make a magnolia wreath is you can always go back and kind of fix it a little bit. You can kind of tighten it up in areas. You can add some pieces if you want to. As you can see, I'm right here, my finish point again. I didn't finish it all the way because I want to be able to show you how to do the hardest part, but also wanted to show you how to make the leaf bunch because we're just using leaves here. So I'm going to take my wire out. Again, I would typically keep my wire on the paddle or the spool all the way through the process. But for you guys, I went ahead and cut a piece off. So, whoop, looks like I unwrapped it a little bit too much there. All right. So I got that off to the side. It would typically be on my spool. Then I'm going to start making a leaf bunch. Now, what I like to do is try and make as many of these ahead of time as I can. If you make too many, this is a very full wreath that I made here. It doesn't have to be this full, so you can use a little bit less bunches. Depends on how much magnolia you have or how much time you want to spend on it. But what I like to do is get my biggest leaves first and just kind of start putting them out there like that so you can see my bunch. Let me move this out of the way so you can see it a little bit better. So I've got my leaves like that. I'm just going to add as much as I think I need. The more the merrier, at least in this wreath, because I've got a lot going on in there. And then I'll add a slightly smaller one. And then I'll just stick a brown back in there. Then I'll add maybe a slightly smaller one. And then maybe we'll finish this off with that kind of really kind of cool curled piece right there. So there's my leaf bunch. Now, what I'm going to do from here is I'm actually going to tie it off. So I should have probably done this ahead of time. But this I can cut in half. This is just a strip that we have pre-cut. You can just have all your pieces little cut off to the side, get a bunch of them together, cut them and have them off to the side, make your leaf bunch. Now this is the hardest part, I think, is you've got all these little branches and you're holding them by these little stems at the bottom. So you just kind of have to hold on to them, make sure you got them in there nice and tight, and then just take your little piece of wire and just wrap it around. And what I like to do is just wrap it once really tight as I can, and then come the opposite direction with a slightly bigger piece. And now I've really got it nice and tight. And then maybe I'll even tie it off on the back with the remainder, just to make sure I got it really, really good. All right, and there's my bunch. So you can see I got some brown pieces sticking up. I've got some green. The nice thing about this is I can rearrange them slightly. So maybe I wanted the brown one over there and the green one over here. You can rearrange them a little bit, but there's my last bunch. So let's go back to the wreath. And I would have a bunch of these done ahead of time. Just get a bunch of them done up so that all you got to do is when you start your spool, because if all you have is your paddle wire, you need those little pieces separated off to the side, cut a bunch of pieces of those, get all your bundles together, and then you can just stick your bundles in and keep wrapping with your spool. So this is the last piece again. So we'll put it in here. A little bit easier to get this wire around because you got big leaves. Really easy. And it looks like maybe I left enough space to do one more bunch. So we'll do one more so I can show you that again. One. Got a bunch of big leaves here. Let's see, I might need some slightly nicer, yeah, there we go. Got a nice, really dark brown back piece. And it's a nice small little leaf too. So then I've got some green ones here. And you're always going to find a lot of different imperfections in the magnolia, but it's okay. Magnolia looks fine. No matter what you do, I don't think you can mess this up. It's very, very easy. The hardest part, like I said, is making these bunches. If I had these done ahead of time, it's a little bit easier to do. And then I'm just going to put a single brown piece on there. Slightly smaller bunch because I don't have as much space that I need to fill in there. I'm going to take that, got my wire, wrap it around a couple times, come back over, make it nice and tight, twist it off, and then I've got my last little bunch. Didn't need a whole lot to finish this wreath off. And then we'll just use up all the wire, wrap it around. And then, because it's magnolia, I can space it out. And there you go. There's my magnolia wreath. Now, again, you could do this with just all the green leaves facing up. I've seen people do them with just the brown backs facing up. I think any way is cool. I like a little bit of mix in there. And again, I didn't really think about it too much. It wasn't like perfect. I didn't do like 3 big leaves, a brown back, 2 medium-sized leaves, a brown back, 2 small leaves. I just kind of went through and grabbed them and just kind of made it kind of natural and fun. I didn't think about it too much because it's magnolia and because of the way we did it with just the leaves on that wire frame is I can shift some things around. So I can move some things a little bit. If it's sticking out too far in one spot, I can move another piece there. So like there we go. There's a great example. That one was facing inward. Can't quite see it. Bam, right there is where I want it. Looks great, really pretty and glossy. This is going to last a long time. It's really, really pretty. Love this wreath, so I think this one's going home. I know my wife loves magnolia. This one looks really, really good. I'm sure she'll want more created, but this is a great one. Love magnolia. Very, very simple. The last one that I'm going to show you is very simple. This is cypress, so this is that Leyland cypress. I went ahead and completed this one. It's done. I don't need to do anything else to it, but it's just a very simple wreath. So you can see there, really, really easy. Looks like I might have got a little full on one side. What I will tell you with Leyland cypress or anything that's longer and maybe a little bit more wispy is, and what I found with this one, because I've actually never made one out of Leyland cypress, so this was my first, is if you use long pieces, so some of these pieces I used are kind of long, and they tend to flop a little bit, and that's okay. So they're a little floppy. I might have used, next time I might use slightly smaller pieces. So kind of that same size that I was using earlier, maybe something like that, create a nice little bunch. And basically I did the same thing. I just put all of it together in these nice bunches. And then I just put it in there and wrapped my paddle wire around it. So it's really, really simple. But I think if I had used slightly smaller pieces, it would have been a little bit maybe tighter and not quite as floppy. But what I did do to this one, because I always love to show my lights, I love lights, is I actually went through and put some lights in here. You can't see them, right? Can't see anything. But watch this. There we go. Got a little bit of light on it. So this is just my Invisilights, my micro LED lights, and all I did was just attach the battery pack to the back. I can hit it once. So I hit it once, and it's on a timer. I can go and hang this on my door. It'll look great all Christmas. Really, really pretty. Love cypress, just that kind of natural look. Really, really easy to use. So that one's finished. I don't need to do any more work to it. Let's see. We're right at about 50 minutes. I want to try and tidy this up in an hour. So let me just give you a real quick on how you can do if you want to make a garland. So garland is kind of a similar idea. All you need is a piece of twine, rope. It could be anything. This is a pretty thick piece of twine. It probably doesn't need to be this big. but it's the same idea. Is all you're going to do, this is really just your guide. That's all it really is. It's just a guide. Let's see how I get, pull off that side. So this is just my guide. It's all it's going to do is kind of help me go along the way. Let's start on this end. All you're going to do here is take your paddle wire and attach it to the end. And I'm just going to wrap it around there a couple times. And there we go. So I'm just going to leave it off to the side. And then let's do just whatever I've got the most of. Let's do some Fraser fir. Let's maybe I'll make something to match that wreath. I really like that way that wreath turned out. So we'll do something to match that wreath. And I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to get it started so you can see it. So we got our Fraser fir. I've got my cypress out here. And I'll show you one other little trick that's really fun. So I've got my, going to make my bunches. Same idea, same concept. Let's just make some bunches here. A really pretty piece here, but it's too long. I'm always saving all my little pieces and parts because you might need those later. All right, so we start with the Fraser fir bunch. We'll do some Leyland cypress. Maybe I'll put 3 pieces in on this one, just to kind of make it a little bit thicker. So we got 3 pieces of Leyland cypress on top, and then again that gold mop. Now it doesn't have to be gold mop. Again, this could all just be one type. I just happen to love that gold color. It really shows up really, really well. So we'll put the gold mop in there. Now, I'm going to put this off to the side. I'm going to show you another little trick that you can do here. Maybe you want to add some pine cones or berries or whatever you might want to add to this. Real simply, I mean, this is just a small little tiny lodge pine cone is what we call it. You might find lots of different ones. Sometimes deodar cedars have little pine cones, a couple different other types. I might not use this one because it's kind of big, but the smaller ones are a little bit easier to do this with. So again, I'm going to take that strip of green wire. This time I'm going to put it down at the bottom. I'm going to put it right in the middle of my wire. I know this is very hard to see because this wire is almost invisible, which is why I love it. But I'm basically just going to put it just like that, right through the bottom of the pine cone. Then I'm going to twist my wire. And then I'm just going to twist it all the way down. And what that's doing is creating basically a pick. So now I've got this pine cone that's right here on this piece of wire, and it's facing a little forward, which is going to be perfect, but I've got something to attach it to. So I'm going to cut off a little bit of the excess wire. Don't need all that. And then I'm going to put that in my bunch. So I got this bunch. I'll put this little pine cone in there. Shows up really, really good. So now we got a little tiny pine cone. And then I'm just going to lay this right on this piece of twine. And again, the twine really isn't doing much other than kind of giving you a guide, something to work off of. And then I'm going to wrap it once, twice, and 3 times. There we go. So let's do one more. I don't have a finished product on this one. Sorry, I got tired last night. Needed to get some sleep. So we'll make another bunch here, but I will finish this up and it'll look awesome. And it'll kind of match my wreath. Maybe I'll go back and add some pine cones in there. So I got my Fraser fir. This time I'm doing 3 pieces of Leyland cypress. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly scientific like that. I just thought I would just do a little bit of a fuller kind of bunch. Some gold mop cypress. Got a nice pretty gold piece in there. And then if I were smart, I would have all my pine cones done off to the side. Don't have them all done, so we'll just lay that off. That's what's cool about these bunches, is you can just kind of lay them off to the side. It's not going to be a problem. Get this wire right in the middle of this pine cone. And then we're just going to twist it on so it's nice and tight, and then we'll just twist it down. Go through and get all my pine cones done, and then I would be done in no time. So cut off a little bit of excess, got my pine cone, pop it in there, right in my Leyland cypress, right with my gold mop, a little bit of contrast, looks great. And then we've got our paddle wire here. We've got our rope, which is basically just our guide. And then we'll just work this right down there. Now you could do this on a piece of wire. So you grab some wire and do it with it, which might add a little bit more stability. But then basically I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do that all the way down. You cut your rope as much as you want. The rope is really just your guide. Really, really simple, easy way to do it. Maybe you go through with your twine and wrap a layer of wire onto it. That might allow you a little bit more flexibility if you want to let it hang. This is going to hang very naturally at the end of a garland. Or if you want to add some wire into that rope, then you might have a little bit more ability to kind of shape it and put it over a door frame or something like that. It might hold its shape a little bit better. But this is how you would make a garland, and you would just keep going all the way through, and that turned out really, really pretty. So you can see that right there, and I'll just keep on going. Now at the end, I might flip the last piece and put it the opposite direction. Let me show you that real quick. That won't take but a second to kind of fake that for you. We'll just grab some more Fraser fir. Just to give you an idea, I'm not going to make this the most amazing looking bunch in the world, but we'll just kind of throw this together real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about there. A little bit of gold mop. Don't have any more pine cones available for me right now, so I just want to show you this. If you take all of your pieces are going this way, you just take your last piece and go this way, and there you go. Finishes off your garland. You can add a little bit of piece there. Now what you can also do is when you get to the center, you might go the opposite direction, especially if it's on a mantle where you want half of it running one way and the other half running the other way. Then in the center, you can just add a little bit more. Maybe I'd add a grouping of pine cones. Maybe that's where I put a ribbon or a bow. So you got lots and lots of options there. But it's really, really simple. It's the exact same idea as the wreath. So last but not least, we'll pull them all out so I can kind of show you again one more time. We'll put this garland, I'll finish that later. Push that off to the side. All right, so we've got just Leyland cypress. Turned out really, really pretty. That'll look great on a door. Very, very easy to do, very simple. That one looks great. Love the way that turned out. Magnolia, absolutely love magnolia. I know this one's probably the most time consuming, but it's absolutely gorgeous and it's going to last a long time. Really, really simple. And there's usually lots and lots of magnolia around. If again, you need magnolia, you need cuttings, you need pieces, come in and see us. We've got lots and lots of bundles of fresh greens around, but this will look great on a door, on a red door, any kind of door. It's going to look amazing inside the house, outside. Really, really simple. That one turned out great. The boxwood, like all my little pieces of fresh green in there, so you get that little bit of that differentiated color. I could have gone through and tipped all of that out, and it would have been just nice and dark green, but this one really turned out great. So we've got boxwood as well. And then, of course, our mixed greens. So this one really looks great. I think I might add some pine cones to it. I think it'll add some natural to it. I could add ornaments to them. I could add lights. I could add ribbon. Lots and lots of different choices. Artificial, use some artificial, some lifelike berries are very, very easy. We've got lots and lots of little pieces and different things that you can stick into your wreaths and garlands. But this really turned out really, really great. I'm really excited about that. I'll finish up my garland. I'll have something to match with it. Maybe this goes over the mantle. You put this nice wreath over your mantle with a matching garland, and you got all that fresh, great, amazing smell. Really, really nice look, and it's just fun. It's fun to be creative. It's fun to use your hands and create something. Got something to talk about the whole holiday season. So I hope you all enjoy this. It's actually very simple. Go out there and give it a shot. You can't mess it up. It's pretty simple. Have fun with it. Keep trying every year, make more and more. They're great fun. They're easy to kind of give away as gifts. So lots and lots of choices out there to use. Look around your home and your garden. Talk to your neighbors. See if you can borrow a couple little pieces, little sprigs here and there. If you can't find anything, come and check us out. We've got lots of bundles of magnolia and cypress and Fraser fir and spruce and lots of different types of things. Incense cedar, I didn't even grab any of that, but I love incense cedar. So we got lots and lots of fresh greens for you to use here at the Garden Center. I hope you all enjoy this. Have a great day. I'll be back Friday when I'll be able to see you a little bit more face to face. I won't be kind of looking up at you, but I wanted you to see my workspace, so I hope you all got a lot out of that. Had a lot of fun making these really pretty wreaths. Can't wait to kind of take these home and start decorating. maybe I'll put a couple out here for sale too. So have a great day, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Have a great holiday season.